Okay guys, I was contacted privately and asked my thoughts on sparring as it pertains to Okinawan and Karate. I appreciate this is a subject we've covered quite a lot, but it is something that comes up frequently, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding or some outdated thinking around the use of sparring, certainly within Okinawan Karate. Now within Okinawan Karate, there's a school of thought that sparring or kumite is a modern practice in terms of in the realms of sports karate, where the objective is to win a trophy or to win a match decided by a specific rule set. It's engaged at a certain distance, which doesn't necessarily pertain to self-defense. So there's a lot of things that would be required to be successful in sports karate that are completely opposite of what we're trying to do in Okinawan Karate, which is ultimately end the conflict as fast as possible, and with Goju-Ryu from a very short range. So it's kind of pushed aside as something that's non-essential for us. When we look at how we use kumite within Okinawan Karate, we have the Ippon kumite, we have kakie, we have various versions, one-step sparring, the kiso kumite, all these kind of things that are within Goju-Ryu. The Renzoku Bunkai that was put together for the Gekisai series, etc. So we have our versions of it, but they are preset, pre-described, and largely they have the same rhythm. So the post I put out yesterday about Makiwara kills flow, kills footwork. Ippon Kumite kills flow, kills footwork. Whereas if we're using the sandbag or heavy bag, and it's not a modern thing, the Jundokan had heavy swinging bags when I was there back in 2001. It still had the heavy leather bags, which people would use every day. I saw more people using heavy bag in the Jundokan than I saw using the Makiwara, by the way, but that's a slightly different subject. So we have certain practices that are popular in Okinawan Karate that are designed to kind of, certainly Goju, keep you rooted to the spot. If we talk about Goju-Ryu in terms of footwork, we have a reputation for being somewhat stuck in the mud, slow footwork, heavy, all these things that are, again, popular opinion, whether we like it or not. It is a viewpoint that is out there, and it doesn't have to be, but we don't do ourselves any favors because we emulate older teachers of the art. We watch, Miyazato Sensei, or we watch Higono Sensei. The whole of the IOGKF has changed the way they do kata to emulate what Higono Sensei does now. He's an old man. He doesn't move like he used to. But now we see all the IOGKF practitioners now doing their kata like an old Higono rather than doing it like the young Higono. It blows my damn mind. Why are we copying old men, moving like old men, If we're old, okay, no problem. But if we're young and still able to move with some dynamic flow to it, it's what we should be doing. If we're Suriashi, we should be covering ground, covering angles, being fast on the sections of kata that require speed, and smooth on the sections that require smoothness. But it shouldn't be this cumbersome dum 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 rhythm to kata. And that is, it seems if we use the word dento or traditional in Okinawan Karate, it has this dum dum, and if we want to be snappy, and then it becomes the WKF snappy bullshit kata, and that doesn't work either. So back to the subject. Kumite, it depends. Is it useless? Yes, it can be, but it depends on what type we're doing. Now, we have used over the years, I've done a lot of the Kiso, I've done a lot of the Sandangi, I've done a lot of the Renzoku Bunkai, the pre-described two-person versions of kata. I've done a lot of the Koryu Uchinari stuff. I've done a lot of flow drills. I've done a lot of the Silat style flow things. I've done a lot of the Mantis two-man flow things. And I will say they are good for a very short window of time. The pre-described things are short for a very good window of time. They will teach you distance, teach you timing, teach you, how to engage and how to maneuver yourself around an opponent to find openings dependent upon the shots that are fired. They will teach you are able to go at a very high intensity once you understand the movements. Once you understand this sequence, you can go full out. It is a version of sparring that we can go pretty much 100% on at a realistic range, because we both know what we're doing. Once we understand, once we both know what we're doing, well, now we can crank the intensity up to be able to fire full power shots, knowing that the other person is anticipating that and able to defend with some realism. That's the good thing about prearranged sparring. That will get you to a point and it will no longer be useful because now you're just autopilot and you're not really downloading any new information. And that is the purpose of Kumite. It is a downloading of information. If we think of kata as our operating system, the Kumite is a means of now spreading out your antennas and now gathering information from various sources to feed back into the system, where now we can understand, process that information and inform the system to run more efficiently and with more IQ. Okay, so all the time we're leveling up, but it needs the right nodes going out to gather information. Once it's gathered all the information from this particular area, if we think of the universe or the internet, whatever it might be, once we've gathered all the information that can be harvested from that point, that node's then dead, it's done. So if we're talking about Ippon Kumite and that kind of thing, even Kakei to an extent, once we've gathered that information, there's only so much information we can gather from that area. So now we need to slightly change the parameters of what it is we're doing. Sports Karate, again, very, very narrow rule set. So it might be we learn how to engage at a longer distance than we would do in our traditional Goju-Ryu. That is a skill in itself. If we're dealing with weapons, if we're dealing with, the popularity of MMA these days, there are more trained fighters on the street now who are used to engaging at a longer range. So we can't assume that everyone we are attacked by is going to be a fucking idiot. Some people might be quite good. And if we are found in a situation where we're against someone who is actually quite good and can outmaneuver us, we're fucked. I don't ever want to be in a situation whereby I do not have an answer for what's going on. So that's why I will go do wrestling, I will go do BJJ, I would go do some salat so I understand how to work with knives and bladed articles. I will go do MMA and get pinned on the ground and get punched in the head, so that I'm used to being in a situation that has gone horrifically wrong for me. I want to be on my feet at Kakei range where I can use my Goju, which is the thing I'm best at. Once I've harvested that information and I'm quite comfortable there, well, now I need to go somewhere where I am dog shit, which for me was the ground. I go to the ground, I get tapped multiple times for years and years and years until such a point that I'm now no longer getting submitted. I can get out of chokes. I can get myself out of most situations that, we'll put it this way, if I'm going against people who are quite good in getting out of bad situations now. So if I'm against someone who's done a little bit, I'm probably going to win in that situation now. Same thing with the knives. I'm not brilliant at it, but I'm good enough to outmaneuver a fucking idiot who's just got a box cutter on him or whatever it might be, okay? So that's the position I like to be in. I like to have enough savvy, enough downloaded information in my system that no matter what happens, long range, weapons, grappling, wrestling, clinch, whatever it might be, I don't care. I'm quite comfortable being in all these different situations now, and quite comfortable in knowing how my Goju-Ryu fits into all these different sections of the pie. So that for me is the real benefit of not just sparring, but cross training as well. And for me, it's knowing how to navigate different ranges, different engagement distances, from the close range that we favour in Goju-Ryu to the long range that is favoured in parts of Muay Thai, parts of MMA, boxing, whatever it might be. I learned to navigate that longer range. I learned to navigate grappling through the BJJ and through the wrestling. And even longer range still, if we're talking about Okinawan Kobudo, where we're using the bow, where we're using the nunchaku, all these different... any range, like aside from fucking shooting range, I've done that as well, by the way, but aside from shooting range, we have all bases covered. Introduce the prospect of multiples into that as well, so you can introduce some multiples, and then you've got your ideas covered. But if we're talking about multiples, by the way, on that subject, if we are dealing with multiple opponents, what are we talking about? We're talking about angles and funnels, how to angle off, how to funnel people so that we're not facing two people like that. I want to maneuver them so they're kind of in each other's way and pissing each other off and they can't quite get to me. This is the use of angles. How do I learn angles? I'll go do my sparring. I'll learn how to angle people into the corner of the ring or how to angle them onto the wall of the cage. well, even though that's an individual sparring session, I'm learning how to create angles and how to funnel that person in the direction I want them to go. So I'm dictating the angles, I'm dictating where they're positioned. If I can do that on one person, well, now all I need to know is how to funnel that one person in front of that many people. So the same skill that I'm using in that applies to that, okay? So anyway, hopefully that just gives some idea about my thoughts on sparring, my thoughts on the kakie, the ippon kumite. They all have a place, but to come from a point of that sometimes we're guilty of in Okinawan like this aloofness that, oh, I don't need to do that because I'm going to end the fight in 3 seconds. That is not a good attitude, trust me, from experience. From experience, when that first strike don't work the way you thought it did because you slip a little bit, or he's moved a little bit, or you're just too fucking excited and you miss the target and you fuck up, because trust me, in real life, you are gonna fuck up everything. Now we need to know what to do once we've made that mistake, and we don't want that to be the first time we've made a mistake. We want to have made a mistake thousands of times prior, so that we don't panic when we mess it all up and we end up in a situation, hopefully, that we've already been in thousands of times before. We know the solution, so we can stay calm, we can stay relaxed, control our breathing, control our mind, control our opponent. That's just my thoughts on sparring and the importance of it to us as classical martial artists.